Hey, I'm Deidre Detterman, host of the Do It My Way podcast, where we empower women business owners and CEOs to do business on their terms with no regrets, hesitation, or fear. I'm obsessed with all things marketing. I started my career in television, and I remember sitting in countless meetings, listening to executives talk about things that needed to change, but they never did. I was always thinking, what if we did it my way? Once I became an entrepreneur and I started living life on my terms, working the hours I want to work, making the money I want to make, I started to feel success. I was finally in control of my destiny. I hope you will join me on this journey discovering how you can do it your way. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest, Tracy Spears. She's an author, a speaker, a leadership coach. She has some amazing stories you're not going to want to miss. Well, Tracy, I'm so excited to have you here today. It's such an honor because I will tell you, there's probably been 5 people over the last 6 to 9 months that have said, do you know Tracy Spears? You need to have her on your podcast.
That's so funny.
And I know of you, and you're always doing these amazing things, traveling, speaking, leadership, all of that, but I've never met you.
I know. And those 5 people are probably the same 5 people that are saying the same thing to me. So they're like, have you not been on her podcast yet?
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited. Tulsa's not very big. And to have women advocate leaders out there, I mean, I want the whole world to know, like, hey, this is a possibility for you. And what are the things, what's the secret behind what you can do to become that powerful woman leader? Because that's what a lot of these people on this podcast are looking for.
Oh, thank you for even the consideration of that.
So
let's see. I hope I don't disappoint them.
No, gosh, no. Okay, so OU softball player, national team.
Yes.
Let's talk through that time and how has that affected you today?
Oh my gosh. So I was at OU playing softball long before they were winning any national championships. So when I went, we brought the win-loss record down, is what I always say. So, but it was how I got an education. So for me, that was I grew up in a trailer park right around the corner from here, and that was my way out of the trailer park. Was going to be to go on a softball scholarship, as my dad said it. He didn't say academic or basketball, even though that was the thing. So I knew pretty early on that was the goal, and once that happens, for me in that, kind of environment, I went, to play softball. And so I didn't go to school. So when you ask how does that, shape me? I wish I would have been more intentional about the schooling part of that and less intentional about the softball part of that. But I'm just super grateful, for my time there. And I think it's also the introduction into high performing teams and how, whether you're in corporate America or you're an entrepreneur or you're an athlete or you're in the band. I mean, there's something to, who you have to be and how you have to show up to function in that kind of an ecosystem. So, and I'm still fascinated by that today.
Well, discipline for a college athlete is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a couple of friends, one of my friends' sons playing OSU football right now.
Oh, nice.
And what they have to do, and he's just on the practice team, he's a freshman, but the insane discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, getting up every day and they're telling you what to eat and how often you're working out. I mean, you're basically working out all day, every day.
That's true.
There's conditioning and all that, but there has to have been, leadership. Do you feel like that was planted that early, that leadership was important? Or when did it kind of come to you that, leadership is something that I want to hang my hat on? It's something important to get out to the world.
I don't know. I can't tell you the moment that happened because I look back on it. I will tell you there was one quick story. So I'm a freshman and I hit a ground ball and again, and I'm thrown out. And so I'm running across the field and Marita Hines, who was my coach, kind of grabs me and she's like, Spears, what's the matter with you? And I'm like, what do you, I'm so sorry. I'm just a freshman. And I'm like, sometimes the ball looks like a basketball. It just looks like a BB. And I'm just apologizing for not being able to get a hit. And she goes, I don't care if you ever get another hit. She goes, what I care about is when you get back over to that bench, you need to quit thinking about yourself. And I was like, I don't ever have to get another hit.
Right.
I was like, but that was my first, leadership isn't that I'm the best person. It is that influencing everybody on the team. So that, and I'm still telling that story to this day. So I'm 18 years old when that happens. And I think that's probably still maybe the biggest lesson about leadership, right? Is it's not about you.
Exactly.
It's about how do other people feel around you and in your presence. And so, the self-awareness piece of that was like a lightning bolt that day. I just remember sitting there thinking, I've been really thinking about myself a lot.
What 18-year-old is not? I have a 19 and a 21-year-old, and I'm like,
true.
that's kind of their life.
That's true.
Right? Everything revolves around them at this point.
I think that's true. Yeah.
So, and that, I love that you say that, because I do think a lot of leaders think it's me. It's about, and I've been guilty of that. I've got to be the one that does X, Y, and Z to move the needle. There's nobody else around me that can do it, as good as me. I've been doing it the longest. I've got to do it. But you're only as good as your team.
That's right. Yeah. And listen, I didn't get the lesson then. I got the first part of that lesson. I spent way too long not, delegating, not utilizing a team, not being able to relax a bit and let other people step in and do things. I felt like, I had to be the one to do it all. The buck stops with me and all that stuff, which is so silly, because all you do is rob other people from feeling like they're part of something special, right?
Right. So what would you say, what's a leadership quality in a woman, specifically woman leader, that you all the successful leaders that you've dealt with, you're like, they have that? It's just the one thing that makes them exceptional.
Well, I can't not say good work ethic. I think the thing that makes a leader exceptional is the ability to think of the other person first, right? It's to meet people where they are, not where you are. And that takes a lot of self-awareness. That takes a lot of humility. My favorite leaders have a lot of humility, right? Like they know they don't know it all, and you've heard it. You surround yourself with people smarter than you are. There's something to that, right? I've also watched leaders fire people because they disagreed with them, and then you miss things, right? So I think the leader that can show up and say, I'm going to utilize your best gifts and yours, and together we're going to make something special. Those are my favorite leaders, not the leaders that that have all the answers and know everything. Right? Nobody wants to,
and nobody knows everything anyway.
Well, nobody wants to be on that team. Nobody wants to work with that person. You want to be the person that's like, I have this body of knowledge that can be additive to this team, and that it's respected. And I don't know, I think leaders that can create a space like that are really, really, I would run through walls for a leader like that, for sure.
Can that be learned?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I just don't believe there's any such thing as a born leader. I don't. I've been in this conversation so many times because, are there traits that maybe are more appealing? Maybe, but you can be a great leader without, coming into this world as a leader. So no, I don't buy into that you're born a leader or not. I think it's a skill for sure.
So Exceptional Leadership Lab.
Yes.
Explain to me what that is. And if you're a leader out there and you're thinking, gosh, I need some leadership coaching. I mean, a lot of the people that I deal with, they come and they want marketing and branding and they're going to start this new thing, but they have no idea how to be a leader.
Yes.
Tell me what you do.
So the Leader Lab, Exceptional Leaders Lab, where we go by a couple of names right now, which is a whole other story. But we intentionally named it the lab because it is, we will never be in a conversation that we are faking it or making something up, or we read it in a book. It's Wally Schmader and I worked together for 29 years in corporate America and basically made every mistake you could make. And so the lab is, that we, all of our content is curated by us. Like
real life stories.
This is exactly right. Yeah. There's nothing in our books that, is a manufactured story. So the lab is just this messy place for people to come in, whether it's leadership coaching or leadership training in general, where they can just be as raw and say they have complete, cover. They can say anything they want to say. No one's ever going to, repeat what's being said. So it's a super safe space for people to come. Whether if we're doing executive coaching, it's there's a couple of things I always say in that. I'm going to disagree with you, even if I agree with you, to make sure we're seeing it all. Come as raw as you want to come. Say whatever you want to say. And before you hang up or before we leave the meeting, I hope to give you a couple of new things to think about. And so that's what the lab is. We also have online courses. It started as me being a keynote speaker. And then when the pandemic hit, we became an online leadership training company like
that's the
everyone
world,
else.
though.
Yeah,
that's where we are.
So it's a lot of things. But I'm just super grateful that Wally and I are partnered because he's the other half of my brain, and like he has muscles I don't have in very different ways, and me the same. So between the two of us, we're a perfect partnership. And then let's throw in Melissa Stevens because we have to talk about her. So Melissa is the glue, I guess. She kind of runs. Runs the company. Yeah, she's been an amazing business partner, and we'd be lost without her for sure.
That's so great. I love when you talked about you can come to our space, it's messy because leadership's messy.
Oh, for sure.
Let's just say, we've been, D2 branding's been around 10 years. And I did the corporate thing before that, but I was kind of like, oh, we're moving along real smooth and I feel good about leadership. I feel, good about the team. And then something will hit you that you don't expect out of left field that is the messiest thing ever. And we've just recently kind of gone through some of that. And I'm like, I would have never seen this coming. It's not something I would have read in a book. I would have seen it, you just, things happen. And it's almost like the higher you climb or the better you do or the more revenue that's coming in, the more problems that are going to come. Because I'll have people say, oh, well, I don't need coaching. We hit $1 million revenue business. I'm good. I'm like, no, now's when the problems start.
Exactly right. You just 100%. And they're just bigger problems, right? They're just, they're more intricate. They're, I love that being in those conversations. I love two things about it. One is I'm hoping that I'm helping people, but the other one is I like hanging up and going, woo, I've been there in that situation. So yeah, listen, if you're in a leadership role, it is very hard to find a safe space. You can't go to your team and say, listen, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
And like, I am making this shit up every day. Right. Like nobody wants to follow that leader.
Right.
I mean, you do to a sense, you do want to know.
No, but it's true
that the leader is vulnerable, but you want them to have a vision. You want them to have some confidence and some sense of what they want. So that's what we try to help them do.
I love that. Okay, so Trailer Park University, because you said, I grew up around the corner. Where did you go to high school?
I ended up at Union.
Okay, that's where I went.
You really?
Yeah. Melissa and I.
Is that okay?
Union.
So you're way younger than I am. So I was at Union, but I did grow up around the corner from here. But I ended up at Union.
Okay.
Because a guy named Ronnie Murphy saw me play softball.
Oh, and they were good.
And they wanted me to play on that softball team. And so that was how I ended up over there.
And Union with athletics was, especially, I think they still are, but back in the day, the best facilities, best
they just built that big multi-purpose center. And I remember sitting in the trailer. My dad, saw it on TV or whatever, and he's like, I think that's your way out of the trailer park. You're going to play softball at OU, and it was OU because he loved OU, all things OU. And but he was driving a truck, and like there was no way we're getting out of the trailer with the job that he had at that point. So this guy Ronnie literally works at Ford Glass Plant and offers my dad a job, and that's how we got out of the trailer park. And we moved like one street in the Union School District.
Makes a difference.
So I'm super grateful that my dad was willing to change jobs and all the things.
So Trailer Park University is a book coming out.
Yes.
I'm dying to know the premise behind it.
The best education money can't buy, growing up in a trailer park. I mean, and that's what the book's about. The book's about and everybody has that story, right? Like what I'm hoping to do is inspire everyone to think about those formative years, everything you learn up until you're 12 or 13. Like they're still showing up in your life, don't you think?
Yes.
What would yours be? Like what's think when you think about how you grew up, like wouldn't you did you learn some?
Yeah. I mean, I think mine, and this is maybe deeper than you're going, but my parents divorced when I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
And so my dad left, and my mom, she basically got pregnant in high school, got married, was just a mom, had never, I shouldn't say just a mom, it's a huge job,
Yes.
but never worked, didn't have an education, and found herself divorced, single mom,
Yeah.
3 kids for the first time in her life. She had to go get a job.
Yeah.
Had to get her GED, had to go apply.
Wow.
And seeing that scary moment in life
For sure.
where she didn't have control of her destiny because she wasn't financially sound and didn't have education, I vowed I would never be
That's right.
that.
That's right.
I'm going to be able to support myself if I have to pick up my kids and leave. I'm not gonna make a decision off finances because I don't have it.
That's right.
I just think you don't have power or control.
And so
that would have been something that I think about every day.
Of course you do. And it crystallizes who you are now. It creates a work ethic like no other. It creates an accountability, like all those things. That's exactly what I hope the book does. It makes people look back and go, wait a minute, I show up differently because of that. And I definitely do. So the trailer park, lots of funny stories in there, lots of conversations with my parents that show up in the book. But yeah, and I'll tell you one super funny, because it happened this morning, like the tornadoes that were going on. I'm still completely afraid of tornadoes because of growing up in that trailer park. And so,
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the chapters is called Anchors for Christmas because my mom, who think Shirley MacLaine Postcards from the Edge. That's my mom, who has passed away during the pandemic. But so she's highly dramatic anyway, and comes to me and says, "Listen, there's not going to be any Christmas presents under the tree this year." And my immediate thought was, I've been pretty good, Of course, it's going to be about me. And she's like, "No, it's just that." That tornado was the June 8th tornado, which is infamous if you live in Tulsa.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my, three streets away, the trailer was blown away, like a mile and a half. And so literally, and we were in that trailer, and she said, we're going to get anchors on the trailer for Christmas, so we'll be safe. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, that's so much better. And right?
Perspective.
So being safe has always been, for me, there's a lot in the book about that, just that false safety, by the way. Like the guy shows up. This is way too much information. You can cut all this out if you want to, but I'm going to tell you the story. So this guy shows up with this spool, 8 of these spools, and he throws them over the top of the trailer, and he does a giant corkscrew, and he's like, yep. I think it'll be fine. There's 0 chance that's going to help, But we all felt safe. So,
Right.
Anyway.
Have you ever read the book Primal Questions?
I have not.
It's a new book. Someone recommended. I'm in this entrepreneur group, and it is such a great. Such a great book. But everyone has a primal question from their childhood, that you respond most to. And so, whatever your biggest need in life is, it's usually something from your childhood. And there's one of the questions is, "Am I safe?"
Yes.
And if you grew up in an environment where you didn't feel safe,
Yes.
Certain things, and so everything you do and how you treat people comes back to that primal question. It's
Interesting.
really it's probably one of the best books that I've read. I couldn't quit reading it, and I feel like it was just reading me like a book. It was just. Mine is, am I successful?
Oh,
You
okay.
kind of feel like you always have to have success to feel important or loved. It's driven with success.
Interesting.
And it kind of goes back to my dad was very way into sports, with my brothers and I. And if we were doing good at sports or even academics, but more sports, then that's when we got praise.
Yes,
So
performance-based.
you won
Love.
the track meet. You were MVP in basketball. You did this, you did that. That's what drove. So that's why I chased that. It could be a good thing. You
Yeah.
can turn it into good things. But
For sure.
anyway, it's Primal Questions. It's one of my, I have it on top of my mind because right when you said that, safety, I'm like, that's, and then it'll show you, okay, how I treat people and some of the things I've done in life, come back to that, and now I know why.
Interesting.
Why that's anyway.
That's a good reflection. Yeah.
So, okay,
we should be drinking to have that
let's
conversation.
kind of shift the conversation a little bit because I know you do a lot of DEI coaching.
I do.
And that's part of your leadership in DEI. And, with the current administration and everything that's going on with DEI, people are pulling out. Companies are saying, hey, we're doing away with DEI, in our corporation. And, it's hard for me to understand at what point Now I don't know if the government's spending trillions of dollars on DEI and it should be spent somewhere else, and maybe it's not allocated right. I'm not here to talk about politics really, but when is it okay to not have a diverse, equitable society? Like when I feel like we just stepped back to 1920
For sure.
And I just wonder how you're navigating DEI in your world.
Well, I want to weep at the thought of all of it. So your question is, never was the answer to the question. We should always have that. And you're right. Listen, there's probably some value in some of that, but I think it's the messaging, and it's the way people are interpreting the message that's so heartbreaking for me. Mm-hmm. So as a gay woman moving about the world, I was, in the closet for 25 years, and in corporate America, never having those conversations. Here I am, teaching authentic leadership, and I'm the least authentic person in the room because I'm afraid that I'm going to be disowned. I was disowned by my parents when they found out I was gay. So I have that trauma already. And so when all the DEI really exploded, there were a lot of us that finally felt seen and safe, and we could show up and be who we really were. And there were still some of those tough conversations, but it felt, I felt safe. And now I'm in this space where I'm sitting here thinking I'm not safe. Like I'm looking over my shoulder in some weird way. I've lost a ton of business. So I work with a group called Signature Leaders that provide women in leadership training, and it's couched in the DEI, and all those corporations are suspending all of their funding for that. And so there's a lot of us that are feeling that. But your question for me is different. It is, I just don't think there's a place where being inclusive shouldn't be a priority, right? And I'm in this conversation often about equity, why equity? I even had a client one time that said, "We're just going to be diverse and inclusive. We're not going to be equitable, because we don't see the value in it." And I'll give you a quick story. So I am in the trailer park, and I'm the same player that I would have been wherever I lived. But if Ronnie Murphy doesn't offer my dad that job, and I don't get into the Union School District, where Marita Hines from OU is actually able to see me play, if I go to the school that I was in before, no one ever sees Tracy Spears play. I don't go to college. So equity is just knowing that everybody has a different starting point. And so how can we create a space where we can go, oh, hey, wait a minute, this is somebody that is in an underserved community that we're going to miss, we're going to lose because they don't have the same opportunity. And people that have a lot of opportunity take it for granted, right? Like if you grew up and you knew you were going to go to college, or you grew up and, your dad owned a bit, all the things, then this misses you completely because you're like, well, I just worked really hard. Good for you. And you had opportunity. You had an environment, an inclusive environment. You had somebody that was championing you. You had somebody that knew somebody. But, a kid from the trailer park, I didn't have any of that. But I'm so grateful to Ronnie Murphy, and I'm so grateful to my dad for being willing to change jobs. But to me, that's what inclusion is. It is adjusting the starting line for everybody, saying, you might come in here with, this different experience, but it doesn't mean you're less than. It just means you haven't had the opportunity. So inclusion is where I think we should be talking about, not because we are diverse. So that box is checked. Equitable, people don't understand it. Hopefully that's a little, but I think it's the inclusion. How can you be more inclusive? And the short answer is you meet people where they are. Not where you are, right? I think that's the secret. The secret is if we were to say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're not as far along," and I think great leaders do this intuitively. I think they have this ability to say, I'm gonna go a little further to meet you, to bring you along, and maybe not so far here. And so I think that's what great leaders can do, is they can look at the person, and I think it's hard, by the way.
It is hard
because then you've got to be thinking about the people on your team and not just thinking about yourself. But I think that's what great leaders do. So I don't know, I want to get political with you in this, but I just want to say that, and I'm not going to, but I'm just going to say I'm heartbroken. And I'm heartbroken that there's not that what is happening is making people retreat. It's making people put people in a big category that they don't need to be in. And I think it's misrepresenting what's really been really great about the inclusion and the DEI work that all these great organizations are doing. It'll come back. You know, we're in a cycle right now, and it'll be reinvented in a way that I think, you know, will be effective. I hope anyway.
Well, I think you'd be a great voice for that. I mean, you are a great voice, you know, and you're a great storyteller, and storytelling is what people remember. And, you know, talking about equitable and, you know, you being in the trailer park and sports. And, you know, my husband and I have this conversation all the time because he grew up single mom, no money, you know, and I was at Union, you know, with all the things that you know, I needed. And our daughter played competitive soccer. And so she would travel the country, and she was good, you know, and she could have played in college. She opted not to. She went the sorority route and went to OU and had fun. But I was like, he would be like, well, this is the, you know, the best players play ECNL. You got to be on this team. And I'm like, do the best players play? Because you have to have a lot of money to play on that.
That's right.
We're traveling. There was no fundraising at all. We're spending thousands of dollars a month traveling the country for her to play, to get in front of these coaches. But I said, these aren't the best players. These are the players that have the money to do that. It's not the best players.
Yes. So, yeah.
And we talked about that all the time. That would be our conversation even with the coach. It's have you looked at some of these schools have amazing players that would be great on these teams?
That's right.
But they don't have a parent that's going to schlep them all over the country and pay thousands of dollars and, you know, the gear and the private lessons. And I mean, there's nothing that's equal, especially today.
That's a perfect example.
So,
right. That's
it's not the best players. Yeah. It's the players that had the money to do it.
That's exactly right.
That maybe you're better than the other player that has the money, but not the best players.
Yeah. And, you know, when you talk about that, like our fundraising and stuff, like we didn't have two nickels throw together.
Right.
And nobody, and my dad would, put us in our softball uniforms. We're like in 5th and 6th grade, and drop us off in like these industrial areas and go ask for money. And so we're literally, you know, I remember walking into a carpet wholesale company, and I thought, well, I'll just start looking around at carpet, you know, because I was like, it's a cold call. I'm 9 or 10. Like, it was just horrifying. But that was what we all did.
But what a lesson, like early. Talk about growing up quick.
For sure.
I mean, and I don't know if sales is your thing, but like
that's what I did for 29 years.
Yeah.
I was a full commission outside salesperson, and I was terrible at it for many, many years, but I never quit. So like that was the thing. Yeah.
Tenacity will get you. What's the difference between corporate world and what you're doing today?
Well, I'm the boss,
yeah.
So that's nice.
Right.
Well, Melissa's the boss, as I told you earlier, and Wally. I think the big difference, because we were both fired. Wally and I were fired from that job of 29 years at the same time on the same day. So they came in, and we were bought by another company, and they said, we're eliminating this entire layer of management. You make too much money. And so that was when we started the hustle. We wrote our first book. And so we started, and at the point that we were fired, it was 2 years after that conversation. We watched like one by one, everybody get fired. So we knew it was going to happen, but I was still devastated. And this is a long answer to your question. And the day it happened, of course, I was on the floor weeping, couldn't believe it. Wally was just like, fantastic. He was super excited. And he called me and he said, okay, we've got to make a decision right now. Either, because our phone's going to ring, we're either going to go back into corporate America or we're going to do it on our own. And, when we had this big conversation about I didn't want to be in a place where I was going to have to execute policies that I didn't agree with. I didn't want to be in a place where, I didn't have any influence on the decisions that were being made. So, and I'm not saying I didn't have any influence, but the influence in the way that I wanted to have. And so all those things I don't miss. I do miss the camaraderie of corporate America, though. Like, I miss those big teams. I love going into organizations that where everybody's on a team. And I always leave there and go, man, that would be fun again. But, I do like being a small, organization too, more nimble. So.
And being able to call your own shots.
Yeah.
I think that was because I did that. That's why I started Do It My Way. Was it's kind of like you're in the corporate world. They're calling the shots for you.
That's
if
right.
you want to control your destiny,
that's right.
You got to do your own thing.
That's right. Yeah, agreed.
And so I think that's part of that. Okay. So your podcast, Shift Out Loud.
Yes.
Talk about that. What are the topics that you talk about, and what is maybe a favorite story from the podcast?
So the premise is I want people to tell their stories, and I want to hear the story that changed everything, or the story that shifted them from one way of thinking to another way.
Because you asked me that.
Yes.
My shifts. So that was my shift story.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah, but you have more. And,
I'm sure.
And you'll need to come
I'm
on
old,
my
so I have lots of stories.
You will come on my podcast though, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
I would
good.
love to.
So I would want to know is like, what were those things, those lessons learned? So we hear about you, when your parents divorced, but like you had them also in corporate America and all the things. And that shift is usually something that changes how you move about the world. And the out loud part is, and everybody knows it, like they see you differently. And it changes your conversations. It changes how you think. So it's been it's been an honor that people are willing to be that vulnerable, as you know, like on these podcasts, when people are willing to say, oh, this happened. And you asked me most memorable. There's probably there's two or three. Let's see. The first one, the most memorable, I just did one with Brooke Eby. Brooke is, I saw her on the Today Show. She has ALS and she's 35 years old. And she wanted to be on the pod. She's wanting to educate people on the disease. And so the progression of when I saw her on the Today Show, and we were finally able to get her on our podcast, of how far she, had progressed in the disease, and yet she's just sitting there, saying, big smile on her face, saying, so that was super memorable. When we hung up on that, I'm still going to be emotional about her. And I think about her almost every day.
35 is young.
35 years old. She just moved back in with her family. And the other one, have you had Meg Myers-Morgan on your podcast? You got to have her. She's just amazing and a great guest. So she's super good. But I had her on a podcast, and I watched her speak one time, and she was so good on the stage that I didn't even want to follow her. She's that person. She's really amazing. But she said, she was giving this talk, and in the podcast we talked about it, and it was that the lighthouse doesn't chase boats. And when I heard it, it just, she's like, Tracy, like the lighthouse just stands there and shines. They're not going to save everyone. They don't run up and down the shore. And at that point, I was chasing so much business, trying so hard to please so many people, and trying so hard to say yes to every gig that I was being offered, and compromising my fee structure just because I didn't want to say no. And so that was super memorable, and everything else in that. And then the third one has to be. Gosh, there's so many. There are so many. I mean, I've had so many great guests, but Pam McKissick on do you know Pam McKissick?
Yes.
Okay.
I did some contract work for them.
Okay.
For a while.
Okay, nice.
At Auction Network. Sure. Years ago.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that was.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's around anymore, but it was a little stint through.
Oh, she's just a badass.
Yes.
Yeah. But she was talking about how women trade compliments for cash. And like when she first said it, and then we had this conversation about how, women will say yes to a lot of things just to please everybody around them, while the men are saying no and being promoted. And so that was really
that is impactful. Interesting.
Isn't it? We've all done it.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, Kathy Taylor was on recently.
I love that.
Yeah. So.
Okay, that's good. So personal branding.
Yes.
A lot of what we do is personal branding coaching, with entrepreneurs. So you have a fabulous personal branding. You talk about personal branding.
I do.
What do you think why is it important to have a personal brand with your business?
I think people resist the idea of it. But so you have one, whether you think you have one or not. When you put the term brand on it, I think it creates intention. So like your reputation is a byproduct of all the things you haven't done, but your brand is a series of decisions that you've made. And so when someone is willing to go there and say, wait a minute, I have to be in the impact business, not in the intention business. And that's a shift a lot of people aren't willing to make. So some people are like, well, I'm just authentic, take it or leave it. And I'm like, you're missing something. Like, your intentions are, I think it's Marshall Goldsmith that says that we think of ourselves in our own personal highlight reel and other people in their blooper reel.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's true. And so I think we miss that, what matters is how does it land? What matters is what is the impact? My ability to influence a meeting or a relationship is compromised if I don't pay attention to my brand. And so I just think of brand as a bunch of decisions where you say, this is the impact I want, not my intention, right? Because self-awareness, by the way, you don't get to decide if you're self-aware, right? It's how does it land? It's everybody else decides if you're self-aware, right? You've met the person that's like, I have a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
You got no self-awareness. Yeah. So I think it puts you squarely in the impact business, saying, how do you experience me and my brand? And so, and I bet you go through this, like what is the impact I want to have on that? And then you have to back into that. What would that look like? What would I have to be doing or saying for them to have that experience of me? And so it's just, to me, it's just intention. It's just saying, I'm going to pay attention to what your experience is of this exchange, not what my intention is of that. Does that help?
Yes.
All right. You got it. Yeah.
So what would your number one piece of advice be for a woman out there that's wanting to become a great leader?
My number one piece of advice, probably hire you to do some branding for...
and then you to coach.
Yeah, and then I'll coach her, yes. Yeah, no,
okay, it's not about us.
Okay,
Never mind.
Sorry, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that if you want to be a great leader, I think you have to... there's so many things on the list. You have to have a lot of humility, which I think women do. I think you've got to... imposter syndrome is real. I think you've got to get a more accurate view on how you're being experienced instead of leading from your insecurities. I do a lot of self-limiting beliefs with women in leadership, and I think that are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect? And so men oftentimes are in the Dunning-Kruger, this is so bad, I'm stereotyping. Not all men, not all women, but some men. Dunning-Kruger is where you have all this confidence for absolutely no reason, and the imposter syndrome is where you have like no confidence, but you have all this credit. You have all the accolades to prove it. So moving to the middle, being somewhere more where you have an accurate view of how people are experiencing you. I think, and that can happen through 360s, that can happen through intentional branding. I think men and women need to embark on that journey so that they can have some sense of that. I think find yourself some champions. Find yourself somebody in the organization that is not a mentor, but a sponsor, right? A sponsor is somebody that Wally was an amazing sponsor for me.
What's the difference between, what would you say a sponsor is?
Yeah, a sponsor is somebody that is elevating you in rooms you're not in, and a mentor is somebody that's in a room with you giving you advice.
Okay.
So a sponsor would be somebody that...
An advocate that's higher than you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or in rooms that you're not in, right? And so, I know that as I look back, I remember he was vice president long before I was, and he was the one saying, "Tracy, you should be considering Tracy." And I don't think if he's in that room saying that, I never get to the table if it's not for him. So that's what sponsorship can do for you. And I think people resist the mentor. And listen, the term mentor, I like it, but I think a sponsorship, we talk a lot about personal board of directors, having people that you have chemistry with, that you can relate to, that you can say, hey, wait a minute, sometimes a mentor is assigned to you and you're like, I'm not doing anything you say, but I'm going to have to meet with you every 3 months because the company says that's sometimes a waste of time. But being intentional and choosing who you want to learn from, I think there's a lot of value in that. So those would be some of the things I would tell.
That's great advice. I love that. So if you is in an ideal world and you had to look, 3 years, 5 years down the road, what are you doing?
I'm standing on super big stages talking about Trailer Park University.
I love that.
And I'm inspiring a lot of people to rethink their story, right? Like if I've always there's always this little voice in you that's like, why would I write my book? But there's never anyone that's a writer or writing a book that doesn't think, why should I be writing that? So I think I now know I've got to tell my story so you can live yours, right? I've got to tell my story so you can think about where are you in your journey. And so I'm I'm thinking 3 to 5 years. I'm doing that with some regularity. I'm hanging out with Oprah. I've been to Brene Brown's house. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I'll come with you. That sounds super fun.
Yeah, I'm traveling the world. Yeah.
Well, the Trailer Park University, I was like, that's such a great marketing name.
You think so?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And
I appreciate
my
that.
light bulb is going off with some ideas around that.
So let's talk.
I know. I think that's a fun.
Let's talk about it.
And especially with the current landscape that the world's in, I think that's I think you could fit in really good with that.
So I went to, I'm part of the National Speakers Association, and they put us in a mastermind group, and I'm at my table. This is 2 years ago when I just done the TED Talk, and I had all this enthusiasm about it, and I just couldn't wait to talk about it. And so you sit for a whole day with other people that are way beyond, you. Well, not all of them, but some of them are. And so they're like, you have 30 minutes to say, to workshop anything that you're thinking about for your business. And I was like, I'm going to do Trailer Park University. And they just shit all over it. They were like, nobody wants to go to Trailer Park University. What? And I know. And I was like, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I left her going, they are wrong.
That's fuel.
Yes.
That's fuel
totally
for your fire. One of when you were saying shift earlier, and I'll just tell this quick story, one of my favorite stories, not at the time, but I look back that gave me the fire. Kathy Taylor put on an Entrepreneur Spirit Award back when was this? 2008? When I left corporate America. I was at Fox 23 for 10 years.
Okay.
Left to start a mom website. Because I had my son 12 weeks early, all this stuff happened. So I couldn't, I was traveling the country consulting TV stations. I couldn't do that any longer. So I sat in front of the judges, and I'm saying I'm going to launch a niche website for moms in the Tulsa area. It's called 918moms.com. I'm going to get all these mom bloggers to come on and give content. Each are going to have a niche. I'm going to sell advertising. Well, one judge in particular, there's several women on in the judges, and they loved it. Kathy loved the idea. Sure. Everybody loved it. This guy was just hater. He hated every bit about it. And he said, he raised his hand and he said, there is no way anyone's going to buy advertising from a mom website. And he's not a mom, right? Yeah. He's not, and I have young kids at the time, and I'm just boiling. I can just feel like it's probably coming out.
Punch this guy.
I'm going to spew something that's not nice. So I'm just like, okay. So we leave. We make the finals. We're in the finals. We don't get the award. The award's like $15,000, which would have been real pivotal in our business. We were trying to get the website going and all this stuff. So anyway, the guy that wins ends up, it's a grocery idea. It was a good idea. Didn't take off, never even launched. Right. Okay.
We don't even know this guy.
15,000. He's gone. Yeah. No telling where he's at now. We take off, and in a year, we had 100,000 moms coming to that site every month through the power of Facebook. Wow. And just rode that Facebook wave, blew it up, sold it to Griffin Communications a year later. So all this happened, and I thought of him. I can see him and picture him. I don't ever say his name because he's local, but I think of him all the time. That just looking at me almost with an evil look. I felt like it wasn't even it was I want you to fail. Yeah. It was there's no way anyone's going to buy advertising from a mom website. And I'm like, you watch me.
You have to tell me later so I don't like him.
Yeah. It just was such a bizarre. But I saw him a couple of years later. So after we sold and all that, and then I started D2 branding. I saw him, and he said, "Man, I was wrong about you."
Oh, I love that.
He did. He said, "You guys blew it up." And I said, "Well, I wouldn't have probably blown it up as much. I mean, I have 2 older brothers that would give me the beat down all the time. Yeah. If someone tells me no, that makes me 10 times more.
Okay, well, I'm going to like him now after you said that. Yeah. So he knew he was wrong. So that's good.
So anyway, well, I have had so much fun talking to you. You're just such an easy person to talk to.
Thank you. That's so
I can see you just captivating audiences and just doing your thing. Thank you for everything you're doing for DEI, that you're doing for women, being a leader. It's inspiring to all of us. So
likewise, I appreciate your bringing everybody's stories to people that are following you. So, and you have to be on my podcast too.
I'll do it.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you for listening to the Do It My Way podcast. If you're wanting to build a personal brand, but you aren't sure where to start, I want you to book a discovery call with me at DeirdreDetterman.com. I hope you are empowered today to do business on your terms with no regrets, hesitation, or fear. Again, head over to DeirdreDetterman.com and click on Get a Quote.